leader of ISIS. The program of massive street demonstrations aimed at ultimately bringing down the Jokowi-elected government has been endorsed by Indonesians who have gone to Syria and joined up as ISIS fighters, as they describe themselves, etc. This is the group which is being used by the U.S.-trained Indonesian generals and being backed by Donald Trump's key Indonesian business partner, Donald Trump's key Indonesian political backer, and the lawyer for Carl Icahn's Freeport-McMoran. Maybe it was about a year ago, we did a short segment on Democracy Now! Regarding the fact that one of these figures, Fadli Zon, the politician who was involved in this coup movement, he appeared at Trump Tower along with Donald Trump. This was shortly after Trump launched his presidential campaign. He launched his campaign by attacking Mexicans as rapists, and he got some heat for that. And one of the things Trump did, apparently, was to say to his people, get me some foreigners. One of the foreigners they got him was this Indonesian politician, Fadli Zon. He appeared at the press conference with Donald Trump. For doing so, he was fiercely attacked by the Grand Imam of the Indonesian mosque here in New York City. A very courageous act, by the way, by that Imam, given the fact that Fadli Zon is not just a politician, but is also the right-hand man of General Prabowo. Prabowo is the most notorious mass-killing general in Indonesia. He was also the general who was the closest protege of the U.S. Pentagon and intelligence during his military career. So Fadli Zon was attacked by
Prabowo was instrumental in East Timor.
Yes, he did massacres in Timor and many other places. But now it is his right-hand man, Fadli Zon, who was appearing with Trump at Trump Tower, helping in the initial stages of launching the campaign, and who is now one of the main supporters of this movement, which has as its final goal the toppling of Indonesia's democratically elected president. And among the generals, and this is in a piece that I've been working on, and maybe by the time this airs, the piece will have already been released, that have been complicit in one degree or another in this movement, include General Prabowo, General Wiranto, who is currently still under indictment for war crimes in Timor, General Gatot, who is currently the commander of the Indonesian Armed Forces.
We'll be back with investigative journalist Alan Nairn in 30 seconds.
Perlahan atur langkah untuk berhenti, beri waktu sejenak untuk pahami bisik suara dalam hati.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman as we continue our conversation with investigative journalist Alan Nairn, who's just published a shocking expose at The Intercept, revealing backers of Donald Trump in Indonesia have joined army officers in a vigilante street movement linked to ISIS in an attempt to oust Indonesia's president. I asked Alan Nairn to talk more about Trump's connection to Fadli Zon, the Indonesian politician who was seen with Trump at Trump Tower during the presidential campaign.
Well, after Fadli Zon returned to Indonesia, as I mentioned, he was fiercely and very courageously attacked by the Grand Imam of the Indonesian mosque here in New York City. And then he was also attacked by his colleagues in the Indonesian Congress. Fadli was and is the #2 person in the Indonesian Congress. And they tried to censure him for appearing with Donald Trump on the grounds that it was unethical. And as the Imam had pointed out, the thing that Trump is famous for in U.S. politics is being a racist and being anti-Islam. And this was especially sharp and ironic because Prabowo and Fadli Zon have used as their main political tactic attacking any of their opponents on the grounds that their opponents are, one, anti-Islam, not as Islamic as they are, and two, tools of foreigners. Prabowo, of course, as he had told me in our extensive discussion, himself was the closest partner of U.S. intelligence in Indonesia when he was helping to run the mass murdering Suharto military. He worked for the DIA, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, but in the campaign he was running as a phony nationalist. So after he returned to Indonesia, Fadli Zon was under pressure from the Congress. He, in the end, escaped any serious censure, but he did not repudiate Donald Trump. He became Donald Trump's most vocal defender within Indonesian politics. And indeed, after the point in the campaign when Trump said that he was going to ban all Muslims from the United States, including in its first version, in its first iteration, ban even Muslims who were citizens of the U.S., even members of the U.S. military who happened to be overseas at that moment. He was going to ban them from returning home. He later had to modify and back off from that. After Trump made his first outrageous call for the Muslim ban, Fadli Zon defended him in Indonesia. And he said, Trump is not anti-Islam. Donald Trump is not anti-Islam. And just you wait and see. As soon as he becomes president, he's going to drop all that stuff because that's only campaign rhetoric. So in essence, Fadli Zon has been Donald Trump's political spokesman in Indonesia.
And Ellen Nairn, who is Harry Tono?
Harry Tono is one of Trump's two business partners in Indonesia. They're working on a resort and some other projects. And there was recently a report within BIN, the Indonesian intelligence agency, which asserted that Harry Tono was covertly donating funds to the coup movement involving the FPI and the generals. Harry Tono is a media magnate like Trump. They actually have a similar profile in business. He's in media, and he also sponsors beauty pageants. Tono's media stations have been, in a sense, propaganda wings of the coup, the street coup movement, to the extent to which they were actually officially admonished by the Indonesian State Broadcasting Board, which is usually a very weak, quiescent body. So these stations have been serving as kind of the propagandists for Trump, and the internal intelligence
for Trump.
As propagandists for the coup movement, and the internal intelligence report, which I had access to, asserts that Tono was also going beyond that and directly contributing funds to the movement. Now, the background to this is very important. The Indonesian military came to power in 1965 in a coup where they ousted the country's founding father, Sukarno. They consolidated power with a massacre of anywhere from 400,000 to 1 million civilians. The massacre was enthusiastically backed by the U.S. The CIA gave them a list of 5,000 communists to start with. The U.S. press hailed it, as in the words of one New York Times column, a gleam of light in Asia. The army installed General Suharto as the country's dictator. The Clinton White House years later described Suharto as our kind of guy. President Ford and Henry Kissinger personally gave Suharto the green light to invade East Timor, which produced the most extensive proportional slaughter since the Nazis. The army implemented a regime which involved kind of a semi-religious glorification of the army and stigmatization of any kind of reformist element, which they would characterize as communist. And when needed, or when they felt like it over the years, they would stage additional massacres. Then, in '98, partly as a result of the Asian financial crisis triggered by banks, partly as a result of the amazing courage of activists who came out on the streets of Jakarta to demand the ouster of Suharto, partly as a result of the fact that the grassroots movement here in the U.S. had succeeded in cutting off most of the arms pipeline from the U.S. to Indonesia, which then constrained them in the extent